What's up, Doc?
Bugs Bunny is not only one of, if not the most famous Looney Tunes character of all time, but he is also one of the most famous fictional characters in general. And in today's video, I'm gonna discuss the history and evolution of everyone's favorite Looney Rabbit. But before I hop into that, yes, that was a pun, it would be greatly appreciated if you would leave a like, a subscription, and maybe even a comment. And with that now out of the way, let's get into the video. Bugs Bunny made his debut in the short, Porky's Hare Hunt, which released in April of 1938. And going off of looks alone, this looks absolutely nothing like Bugs. His design is extremely different. He doesn't even have a name here, officially that is. Nowadays, this very early iteration of Bugs is simply referred to as Happy Rabbit. And this was stated to be his name by Mel Blanc, the one who voiced the rabbit. And if you've watched my other Looney Tunes videos, you surely know who Mel Blanc is. But apparently Blanc just completely pulled that name out of thin air, and it was in fact never used. Okay, back to the actual short itself. You remember the 1937 short Porky's Duck Hunt, where Porky goes hunting and comes across a crazy duck who annoys him? Well, Porky's Hare Hunt is pretty much the exact same thing, but instead of a crazy duck, it's a crazy rabbit. And the similarities between the two shorts was recognized, as Ben Hardaway and Cal Dalton's goal was to put a rabbit suit on that duck. And those two were responsible for the rabbit, and also the directors of the short. And the goal was definitely achieved. This rabbit is very loony, and while watching the short, the rabbit has this little laugh that it does. And I was thinking that it sounded extremely familiar, and after reading some information, I realized it's the same laugh that Woody Woodpecker has, who was also voiced by Mel Blanc. But not only that, Ben Hardaway, remember the director of the short, also helped with the creation of Woody Woodpecker. Other than the laugh, Blanc gave this rabbit a sort of country-ish accent.
Don't shoot! I'll talk! Honest, Chief, I never done nothing to no one.
There's not really too much to say about the rabbit's design here, it's just a rabbit. After the release of the short, the rabbit was a hit, just like Daffy, so naturally he was used more. The Happy Rabbit's second appearance was in the short, Presto Chenjo, which released in March of 1939, where the rabbit is the pet of a magician named Shamfu? One of those is probably right. Anyways, these two dogs on the run from a dog catcher hide in the magician's home, where the pet rabbit does some weird magic stuff to mess with one of the dogs. This short redesigned the rabbit a bit, where he now had tan colored ears and a tan snout. The rabbit here wasn't as crazy. His looniness comes more so from his insane nonsensical magic tricks that he pulls. The rabbit would then appear in the short Hare-um Scare-um, released in August of 1939, where he got a pretty drastic design change that was done by, best I can tell, Charlie Thorson, who was an animator on the short. The rabbit was now gray with a white underbelly, large teeth, and yellowish gloves. This was also the first time that the unnamed rabbit was referred to as Bugs, albeit not in the cartoon itself. Now feel free to correct me if I'm relaying this incorrectly, but from what I've read, when Thorson made the redesign for the rabbit, on the reference sheet for the character, he named it Bugs' Bunny, as Ben Hardaway, one of the directors for the rabbit's first short, as I mentioned earlier, and also this short, Hare-um Scare-um, had the nickname Bugs. So the model sheet essentially said Bugs' Bunny, since he was like one of the creators of the rabbit, and the name was signifying that it was his bunny. That makes sense? And I guess the name Bugs was liked, as Bugs' Bunny became Bugs Bunny, and the name just kinda stuck. Also, this was kinda funny to me. Thorson apparently said that he created Bugs solely by myself and without the assistance or direction of anyone else. That's one heck of a statement to make. Don't get me wrong, he helped and was instrumental in the early design of Bugs, but to say that he was the sole creator is really pushing it. I can't even blame him for saying that though, because if anyone had the opportunity to say that they created one of the most iconic cartoon characters of all time, they would probably take it. In the short, Hare-um Scare-um, just like with Porky's Hare Hunt, Bugs goes up against a hunter, but instead of Porky, it's famous Looney Tunes icon, John Sourpuss, who only ever appeared in this short. What do you mean you've never heard of John Sourpuss? He's legendary. I should know, I was his sole creator. I'm sorry, I promise I'm done with that joke now. I just couldn't help myself. In the short, Sourpuss is livid that meat will become more expensive due to tariffs. I mean, the the Butcher Union, voting to raise meat prices. So he decides he can get his own meat, but turns out he can't. He spends the short trying to shoot Bugs, but the wacky rabbit outplays him repeatedly. Also, I think that this is the first short, where Bugs dresses up as the opposite gender, and that may sound like a very random thing to bring up if you aren't familiar with Bugs, but if you are familiar with him, you would know that that is an extremely common thing for him to do. Bugs' next appearance was in the short, Elmer's Candid Camera, which released in March of 1940, and this was the first short, where Bugs appeared alongside Elmer Fudd, albeit with a very early design. Bugs appeared here with pretty much the same design as in the last short, the only difference being that his nose is now black and he no longer has gloves. Also, I cannot get over how weird Bugs' early voice is here.
What are you doing? Taking pictures? Nice hobby.
Now this next short, which was Bugs' fifth appearance, is considered Bugs' first official cartoon. The other shorts with the unnamed rabbit are early iterations of Bugs, which would evolve over the years into how we know him as today, but it's not really him. It's essentially a different character that evolved into Bugs, but this was actually him. And this first official short for Bugs was titled A Wild Hare, which released in July of 1940, and Bugs here would become much more like we know him as today. In the short, Bugs is once again paired up with the incompetent Elmer Fudd, and here Bugs is kinda like a wise guy prankster, as he messes with the idiotic Elmer Fudd.
Pardon me, but you know, you look just like a wabbit. Come here. I am a wabbit!
Elmer is so incredibly stupid in the short, it's fantastic. Bugs gives him a perfect shot to take at him, and he misses. So Bugs pretends like he got hit. Elmer thinks he shot him, as he deliberately tried to do so. You'd think he would be happy, but this is his reaction.
Mr. Wabbit, say something. Speak to me. I'm a widower.
Bugs' voice here was changed to better match his new wise guy personality, and his introduction is perfect. He rises out of his rabbit hole, chewing on a carrot like some legendary creature, and the very first words out of his mouth are,
What's up, Doc?
Now you may be thinking, that's a very odd thing for him to say, but at the time period when the short was released, it was a fairly common expression. The director for the short, Tex Avery, who was heavily responsible for refining Bugs' personality here, was from Texas. And the term doc was a common expression there, and essentially meant the same thing as dude means today. Bugs' design here was redone by Bob Givens, and the most notable design changes here are, firstly, just the overall way that he's built, but he also has the iconic white gloves, and his snout is white, alongside his underbelly. Now when this short released, it was a big hit, and it's not hard to see why. It came out over 80 years ago, and it still holds up incredibly well. In particular, the audience really liked his catchphrase of "What's up, Doc?" and also his munching of the carrot, and those would eventually become permanent traits for the character. Now you may be wondering, why does he munch on a carrot? Actually, you probably don't wonder that at all. In actuality, you probably just assume that he chews on the carrot since rabbits are commonly associated with the vegetable. But Bugs' carrot munching actually has more lore to it than just that. In the movie, it happened one night. This guy, I don't know anything about this movie, so I'm just gonna call this fella Guy. Anyways, this guy here munches on a carrot, incredibly obnoxiously while he's talking. He's just going to town on that carrot. And this scene inspired Bugs' carrot munching.
Figured that out all by yourself, huh?
Ah, that's nothing. Yeah, number 3, that's a pip. Yeah, that's a pitiful one.
So that's why Bugs talks with his mouth full. Bugs' next appearance was in the short, Elmer's Pet Rabbit, which released in January of 1941. This short is kind of weird as Bugs' personality was way different. He wasn't really a wise guy trickster, but instead, an ungrateful loudmouth with a really deep voice.
My dinner? What do you think I am, a rabbit? I'll starve before I'll eat this stuff.
Who constantly annoys Elmer Fudd, who in the short adopted him, which is pretty messed up as Elmer is actually nice in this short, and Bugs is the antagonist.
Turn off that light!
The design for Bugs here was also slightly changed. His gloves were no longer white, but instead yellow. Also, this was the first short where Bugs' name actually appeared. as his name appears in the intro to the short. Bugs' next appearance was in the short Tortoise Beats Hare, which released in March of 1941. Here, Bugs is actually the one who gets messed with. In the short, Bugs agrees to race Cecil the Turtle, another Looney Tunes character, and naturally, Bugs, a rabbit, assumes that he can beat a mere tortoise. And in a spin on the fable of the tortoise and the hare, instead of Bugs' cockiness making him lose, Cecil gets his family members who look exactly like him to show up along the race path and make it look like that the original Cecil is faster than Bugs. And they pull this off. Bugs thinks he loses and gives Cecil the agreed upon prize, $10 whole. In the short, Bugs' design is the same as his appearance in A Wild Hare, although his eyes are smaller. That's the only noticeable difference. So since Bugs was such a hit by this point, he continued to star in shorts, and quickly overtook both Porky and Daffy Duck, who were the Looney Tunes series' former biggest stars in popularity. The next appearance I'm going to talk about for Bugs is not really important to his overall history, but more so just funny and stupid. In the short, Wabbit Twubble, that sounds weird to say, released in December of 1941, Bugs was once again pitted against Elmer Fudd, who was redesigned here to be, much larger. How is this build even possible? But that's not what's funny. In the cartoon, Bugs mocks Elmer Fudd in this scene.
That'll hold 'em all white.
Which is a funny scene by itself. But in around 2018, this became a meme known as Big Chungus. That's all I have to say. Even though it's been so long since this meme was a thing, I have not forgotten about it. And this will not be the last time I mention Big Chungus in this video. The next short to discuss is Hold the Lion Please, which released in June of 1942. In the short, a new rule was established for Bugs and his future appearances by Chuck Jones. And this rule was that Bugs would not harass and mess with anyone unless he was acted against first, to make Bugs not come off as a jerk. So that would be a common format going forward. The next short to talk about is Bugs Bunny Gets the Boyd, released in July of 1942, where Bugs got a very slight redesign. His head was now more round. Yep, that's it. Bugs' next notable appearance was in the short Tortoise Wins by a Hare, which released in February of 1943. And here, Bugs' design was essentially finalized by Robert McKimson, as Bugs pretty much looks like his modern iteration. Also, while I was watching the short, I noticed something a little weird. In the short, there's a newspaper, and I had to double check the short's date, as I assumed that I had incorrectly written down the year that it was released in, due to the article in the bottom right corner. You see that down there? That event occurred in 1945, while the short was released in 1942. Someone who worked on this short must have been clairvoyant. Now going back to Bugs, his design here was not set by this point, so a short may alter his design slightly, like in the 1947 short Easter Eggs, where he had larger cheeks. But his design did eventually come back to how it was in Tortoise Beats Hare, although it, slightly differed depending on who was directing the short and who was animating it. But eventually everyone would get on the same page, and Bugs' design was standardized. Now, keeping theme with that newspaper article I mentioned, Bugs would star in a handful of World War II themed shorts, which was a very common thing around this time period. A lot of other animation studios were making cartoons based off of World War II, like Disney for example. One of Bugs' more notorious wartime shorts was Bugs Bunny Nips the Nips, released in April of 1944, which has been essentially disowned by Warner Bros. In more recent years, due to the offensive Japanese caricatures being portrayed, and rightfully so. I mean, the title alone is bad. The main pun is based off of a slur. I get it was a product of its time, and that the US and Japan were definitely not on good terms during World War II, but it's still something that can be criticized for its offensive nature.
Here's yours, Bowlegs. Here, one for you, Monkey Face. Don't shove, there's plenty for all. Here you are, Slant Eyes. Everybody gets one.
Now, other than the more offensive World War II shorts, Bugs also starred in the short Any Bonds Today, where oh, come on. Ugh. Setting that aside, this was a very short that included Bugs, Porky, and Elmer Fudd, who encouraged the viewer to purchase bonds to support the war effort. Bugs' next notable appearance would come in the short Hair Trigger, released in May of 1945, and here Bugs got a new rival in Yosemite Sam, who was created to be specifically a foil to Bugs. As Elmer Fudd by this point had gotten old, Bugs needed a new tougher foe, so Yosemite Sam was introduced. Now, I only mention this due to Yosemite becoming one of Bugs' most common antagonists, so I'm not going to be going over every time Bugs first interacted with a famous Looney Tunes character, but I am going to talk about the first time he and Daffy Duck interacted, in a short starring both of them, and that came in the short Rabbit Fire, which released in May of 1951. Here, the setup as Bugs and Daffy being rivals was introduced, and I think, out of all of the shorts that I've had to watch for my Looney Tunes videos, and there's been an incredibly large amount, I think this one is my favorite. It's just such a good character dichotomy between the two, with Bugs being a calm trickster and Daffy being an erratic, big-headed character. In this short here, Rabbit Fire, which had the setup of Daffy and Bugs each trying to trick Elmer Fudd into shooting the other, would be done 2 other times, and would become known as the Rabbit/Duck Season trilogy. Now another short that I have to mention is What's Opera Doc, which released in July of 1957, and this short is considered a masterpiece. In my Daffy Duck video, I mentioned the book, The 50 Greatest Cartoons, as selected by 1,000 animation professionals, and What's Opera Doc got first place, and it makes sense why. From a purely technical standpoint, the animation is really good, and it can be clearly seen why this short took 6 times longer to make than the average Looney Tunes short. Well, I guess actually this was a Merry Melodies short, but as far as I'm concerned, they're practically the same thing. The short is a parody of Richard Wagner's operas, starring Bugs and Elmer Fudd. I don't know exactly what's being parodied here, other than the very surface level understanding that it's an opera, as I'm not really well versed in the realm of opera, but what I am well versed in, somewhat at least, is Looney Tunes, and I can confirm it's a pretty good short. In the 60s, theatrical animated shorts began to decline in popularity, and this included the Looney Tunes series, which led to Warner Bros. Shutting down their animation studio. But before they shut down, they made one final short, which was also Bugs Bunny's final cartoon in the golden age of Looney Tunes, and it released in July of 1964, titled False Hare. Even though this was the final short that was produced by Warner Bros. Cartoons before shutting down, it's not really that special of a short. It's just your typical Bugs Bunny story, where he was put up against the Big Bad Wolf and the Big Bad Wolf's nephew. So after the theatrical shorts concluded their run, the Looney Tunes characters made their jump to television, where Bugs Bunny, similarly to Porky Pig, got his very own show, The Bugs Bunny Show, which first began airing on ABC in 1960. The show was pretty much just a way to put the older Looney Tunes shorts onto television in a compilation format, although some new animation was created, but just to link the segments together. The show would go on to run for 40 years, and that is a long time, and it's probably why the series wasn't forgotten. It was just a good way to keep the franchise from dying, without having to make new stuff, since they had such a large back catalog. Now, Bugs had several other appearances for television that are not that noteworthy. You had stuff like Bugs Bunny's Mother's Day Special, and Bugs Bunny's Bustin' Out All Over. But in 1979, Bugs got his own movie to celebrate his 40th anniversary, the Bugs Bunny Roadrunner movie. I don't know why he had to share his birthday movie with Roadrunner, but okay. The movie was just like the TV show, in that it was just a compilation of older shorts that starred Bugs Bunny and Roadrunner, although on a bigger scale since it was a movie. It did have new animation made for it though, again just like the show, to connect the compilation from short to short. We do get to see where Bugs Bunny lives here as well, and he is a very wealthy individual. Cartoons pay well, what can you say? We would then get 2 more compilation movies revolving around Bugs, in 1981 and in 1982, with the release of the Looney Bugs Bunny movie, and Bugs Bunny's third movie, 1001 Rabbit Tales. Bugs' next notable appearance was in the movie Who Framed Roger Rabbit? And in this movie, Bugs was part of a very iconic scene where he appeared alongside Disney's Mickey Mouse. The star power in this scene is immense, and Warner Bros. Only agreed to allow Bugs in the movie if Disney followed the stipulation that Bugs and Mickey had to have the exact same amount of screen time, so that's why the two are in the same scenes at the same time. In February of 1989, the TV special Bugs Bunny's Wild World of Sports was released, and I bring up this special as it was the final time that Mel Blanc, the one who had been voicing Bugs since his first appearance in 1938, would voice the character, as he passed away in July of that year. I don't think I'd have a better chance to talk about this, so here's a pretty interesting story about Mel Blanc. I cannot speak on the validity of the story as it sounds pretty crazy, but it seems like it did happen. In 1961, Mel Blanc was out for a drive and ended up having a head-on collision with someone. The injuries from the accident were so bad that he was in critical condition and in a coma. The doctors had tried to awaken him from the coma for several days, but to no avail. But one of the doctors had a different idea. Instead of talking to Blanc to try to wake him up, the idea was to instead talk to Blanc's characters that he voiced. So the doctor asked Blanc, "Bugs, can you hear me?" To which the unconscious Blank replied, "Yeah, what's up, Doc?" After this, Blank would stay in the hospital for several weeks, but would eventually go on to recover from the accident. Now, like I said, I don't know if this is true, as it sounds pretty wild, but it is an interesting story nonetheless. After Mel Blanc passed away, the voice for Bugs would be done by several different people, but the first to take over the role, and the most common one to do it, was Jeff Bergman, who first voiced Bugs during the 1990s Oscars, strangely enough, where Bugs announces the winner for Best Short. Bugs would then appear in the animated series Tiny Toon Adventures, which first aired in 1990. I've said it 2 other times now, and I'll say it again. This show has a pretty neat plot, where the older Looney Tunes characters act as mentors to younger Toon characters. And here Bugs had the protege Buster Bunny, who is pretty much just like a little him, but blue. In 1991, Bugs appeared in a theatrical short titled Box Office Bunny, which was Bugs' first time returning to the medium since 1964, and was made in celebration of his 50th birthday. Then in 1995, Bugs would appear in another theatrical short, and this one was a parody of Casablanca, titled Carrot Blanca. In 1996, Bugs would star in the movie Space Jam, and here he got a love interest introduced. Yeah, that's right, Michael Jordan. No, I'm joking, partly. The love interest introduced for Bugs was Lola Bunny, who has gone on to become a main recurring character for the franchise. After the success box office-wise for Space Jam, another movie in the same live-action animated style was made, Looney Tunes Back in Action, which starred Bugs and Daffy. And this movie was not a success at the box office, which led to the cancellation by Warner Bros. Of several future Looney Tunes theatrical endeavors, so that was a shame. In 2002, the series Baby Looney Tunes was released. And I mean, not too much to say about this one. As the title suggests, it was about baby Looney Tunes characters, and that of course included Bugs. In 2011, we got the Looney Tunes Show, which was a bit of a reimagining of the series. It no longer had the slapstick comedy format, but it was now pretty much a sitcom starring the Looney Tunes cast. Bugs is the main character in the show, and he lives with Daffy, who is his mooch of a roommate. But Bugs is wealthy due to his invention of the carrot peeler, so that's how he can afford to live in such a large house with Daffy, even though neither of them have an actual job. Bugs is also purple in the first season. It's a weird choice, but it also kinda works. In season 2, though, he had his more usual color scheme. Bugs would then appear in the animated series Wabbit, which was later renamed to New Looney Tunes, and this show first aired in 2015. In the first season of the series, Bugs was the main focus for the show, but in the second and third season, more focus was put on the other Looney Tunes characters. In the show, the Looney Tunes characters' designs were changed, so they looked like how they did during the first few years of their existence. So Bugs' design was reminiscent of his look in the 40s. After that show, Bugs would appear in the series Looney Tunes Cartoons, which first aired in 2020, where once again the Looney Tunes cast had their designs more so akin to their older appearances. So Bugs, for example, now had yellow gloves again, which he had not been seen with for a very long time. Bugs' personality was also kind of like his older version, where he was a bit of a more devious prankster, and specifically when going against his old rival, Cecil the Turtle, he loses his calm personality completely. This series was also the first time that Eric Bauza voiced the character, which is interesting as he has taken over the role of a lot of the Looney Tunes characters, like Daffy for example, but Bergman went back to voicing Bugs after this series, so I guess this was just kind of like a one-off thing. Bugs would then appear in the Space Jam sequel, Space Jam: A New Legacy, which released in 2021, where in the movie, there is a scene where Bugs turns back into Big Chungus. Yeah, I bet you forgot that I said that we would see him again. Other than Big Chungus, Bugs also appears as a realistic 3D animated character, like the other Looney Tunes characters in the movie. Bugs' most recent appearance was in the series Tiny Toons Looniversity, which first aired in 2023. The show is a reboot and also a continuation of the original series from the 90s, and Bugs is once again a teacher. It's a pretty uninteresting most recent appearance for Bugs, as he did not appear in The Day the Earth Blew Up, a Looney Tunes movie, which released this year and only included Daffy, Porky, and Petunia Pig. So yeah, it would have been a better most recent appearance for Bugs if he appeared in the first Looney Tunes theatrical film in a very long time, instead of some, random TV series where he was not the main character. And there you have it, a look back at the history and evolution of one of the most famous fictional characters of all time, Bugs Bugs Bunny. And if you enjoyed this video, a subscription, a like, and maybe even a comment would be greatly appreciated. I said in my last video that this would probably be my last Looney Tunes related video for a bit, but I think I'm gonna walk back that statement. I may make another, not 100% sure, don't be surprised if I don't. I'm still considering what I want my next video to be. Well, actually, here's an idea. I'll throw the question to the comment section. Would you rather me make another Looney Tunes video, or would you rather me do something else? Feel free to even comment what Looney Tunes character you would want to see, or comment what other topic you would want to see, if you're tired of Looney Tunes. So now with that, I'll end this video, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.